Hey everybody, my name is Jody Dahmer and thank you for watching Beargrass Thunder. We're here on a wonderful Wednesday to do another State of the Alley. We've had some really interesting changes just in the last couple weeks and we really want to make sure you guys know what's going on. Let's go. So if you look here, you'll see this goldenrod is actually about to go to seed, and what I mean by that is you can see these tiny little flowers are actually starting to close up. So these will be tiny, tiny seeds that are actually going to be carried by the wind to other places. So if you have one type of flower, especially if it's wind-driven, you can actually create thousands of seeds just from one plant. So when you think of a neighborhood, if you plant some flowers that are pretty rare to the area that you don't see a lot of, the birds and other animals that pollinate will actually be able to propagate those without very little human involvement. And that's something that we can do on Beargrass Creek with all the different neighborhoods. It is fall and the leaves have sensed the temperature change, so they're actually starting to kill the leaves. And so you can see in the spring, next year's buds have already formed on the tree. So in the spring, these will leaf out and begin another part of a branch. The pear trees, now pears are not native to North America. And this is one, probably a calorie pear. Pears are very invasive in the state of Kentucky, but the thing is that they're not going away anytime soon, and they grow so fast, and the shade that they produce is so needed for this area. I mean, you can see how industrial this site really is. This 2 inches of soil is really all that's on it before I put any more wood chips on. And these pear trees are still able to find cracks in the asphalt to grow almost 8 feet tall now. So if you have a pear tree, I'm not saying to cut it down right now, but you really do need to think about how that tree is going to become replaced in the coming decades. With how brittle they are, the faster a tree grows, the more brittle it usually is. So the next windstorm or heavy ice storm that happens, the branches on this will actually fall. And this isn't a problem while the branches are, maybe 1/8 of an inch thick. But when you're talking a 30-year-old pear tree with branches 2 feet around, it could become a really big risk to your property and to your health. So something to consider. I'd like to call this my success story. So you can actually see other seeds, mainly millet, but wildflowers for sure, are actually starting to sprout in this mulch. Whereas before it was much too dry with how hot it was this summer to germinate anything. Now that it's started to cool off, we're actually seeing some root development and stuff finally poking out of the surface. Right here we have one of the oak trees, and this has been a very healthy tree. I think that I transplanted it at just the right time for the roots to stay intact, and you can see that the leaves are fine. I really am excited about the future of this tree. Here we have a little bit of dumping, but mainly just food scraps. I'm fine with what's going on because eventually all that food will rot. I would recommend starting a compost pile if you haven't already, but maybe in a little bit more orderly fashion than what's going on here. So here you'll actually see some asters, and asters are the last wildflower to bloom in the season. And the bees, this is their last snack before winter hits. So it's really important to kind of have some, you can actually see some bees right over there on the asters, so let's check them out. So these bees, this is a really well-known patch, and so the bees are coming over to actually get some nectar and be able to sustain themselves long enough so that when winter hits, they'll be able to stay alive in their hive. So different plants in the ecosystem, when winter comes, they actually fulfill different niches for the wildlife. In the instance of pokeweed, you notice that even though it's dead, you can see that these leaves have died. It's not purple anymore, right? But this will actually become a great bird perch because you know, when you mow your lawn, you actually cut everything to maybe a ½ an inch, and birds really like living in trees so they can see what's going on and see any potential predators. So a songbird will, like a cardinal for instance, will actually be able to perch here and scout the area for food. So it's a great way to, if you have any pokeweed, I would recommend actually leaving it in the winter because even if you don't have a use for it, there is some species who does. Over here, we actually have a lot of decomposing pine needles that have retained enough moisture that all of these seeds that were in the mix, probably deposited by birds and wind for the most part, are now able to germinate. And keep in mind, this soil is maybe this thick. So if you're worried about trying to grow something on asphalt or anything else, like, if it can grow here, it can grow anywhere, right? So I'm excited to see what is actually going to come up. I hope it's not an invasive, but even if it is, I'm happy that something's able to grow here, because even if it's an invasive, I can sow wildflowers and other things this fall to hopefully supplant that. Now this is something really cool. When we returned from Pittsburgh, we actually saw that someone else had painted, and that's really cool because you know, if it's a one-person movement, the minute that person leaves, so for instance if Mariah and I move away from here, we want to be able to have other people be able to maybe not copy this exactly, but at least take the torch. So we're really happy that someone else in the neighborhood has enough pride of this that they're able to showcase their artwork. It's a really neat concept.